干将莫邪 from 搜神记.
Welcome! The story we're exploring today has a title that carries a double meaning, Gan Jiang and Mo Ye. Well, these are the names of a husband and wife master sword makers from ancient China, but they aren't just people. The names also belong to the pair of legendary swords they created together, one male, one female, forever linked in this tale.
And this story, it comes to us from a really fascinating text called Shen. You could translate it as In Search of the Supernatural. Just imagine a book from the 4th century, put together by a scholar named Gan Jiang, and it's filled with these quiet whispers of ghosts, spirits, and the kind of strange, fateful events that can steer a person's entire destiny. So let's settle in and listen to one of those tales. It all begins with a king's command, a sword maker's impossible task, and a single promise, one that would echo from a father to his son, carried on the sharp edge of a legendary blade.
Our story opens with the master smith, Gan Jiang. The King of Chu had given him and his wife, Mo Ye, a commission to forge a pair of swords unlike any the world had ever seen before. Now, this kind of work was all-consuming. It took every bit of their skill and focus, and it took time. 3 long years passed before the swords were finally ready. But Gan Jiang knew the king. He knew the man had a volatile temper, and this delay, well, it wouldn't be seen as craftsmanship. It had almost certainly curdled the king's patience into a dangerous fury. Gan Jiang had a dreadful feeling that presenting the swords might just be the last thing he ever did. And so, as he got ready to face the king, he turned to his wife, Mo Ye, who was pregnant with their child. He spoke to her in a low, urgent voice, leaving this final, cryptic message for the son he might never meet. He told her, "When our son is grown, tell him this. Go outside the house and look towards South Mountain. A pine tree grows upon a stone. The sword is hidden in its back." You see, he'd made a choice. He took only one sword with him to the court, the female blade, Mo Ye. He hid the male sword, Gan Jiang, as a kind of inheritance for his unborn son. And his fears were right. The king's rage was absolute. When he found out he'd only received half of what he'd commissioned, he had Gan Jiang executed on the spot. Well, years went by. Mo Ye had her son, and she named him Qi. When Qi came of age, he finally asked the question that had hung over his entire childhood. "Mother, where is my father?" And so, with a heavy heart, she told him the whole story, about the swords, the cruel king, and his father's final mysterious words. She repeated the riddle, just as her husband had said it all those years ago. "Go outside the house and look towards South Mountain. A pine tree grows upon a stone. The sword is hidden in its back." And so the boy, Qi, he stepped outside and he looked south. But he saw no mountain, no pine, no stone, nothing. He just saw the familiar lines of his own home. But then, his eyes fell upon the main hall, and there it was, a massive wooden pillar, carved from a pine tree, resting on a heavy stone base. In that one instant, the whole riddle just clicked. His father wasn't talking about some distant landmark. He was talking about the very foundation of their home. Qi grabbed an axe and he swung it at the back of that pine pillar. The wood splintered, and there, inside a hidden hollow, was the sword. Gleaming in the darkness, the male sword, Gan Jiang. The moment his hands touched that hilt, his purpose was forged. From that day on, he lived for only one thing: revenge. Meanwhile, in his palace, the paranoid King of Chu started having nightmares. He dreamed of a young boy with an unusually wide brow who just stared at him and swore revenge. The king woke up in a cold sweat and immediately put a bounty out, 1,000 gold pieces for the head of any boy who matched that description. When Qi heard about the bounty, he knew the king's dream had been about him. He had no choice but to flee into the mountains, now a fugitive. His path to the heavily guarded tyrant seemed completely impossible. Lost in his grief, his sorrowful cries would just echo through the desolate hills. But one day, his cries were overheard by a mysterious traveler, a stranger passing through. The man approached him. "You're so young," he said. "Why do you weep with such bitterness?" Utterly desperate, Qi told the stranger everything. The traveler just listened, his expression impossible to read. And then he made a truly shocking proposal. "I've heard," the stranger said calmly, "that the king offers 1,000 gold pieces for your head. So, give me your head and your sword. I will deliver justice for your father." Qi didn't even hesitate. "This is a great fortune," was all he said. He drew his father's sword and took his own life. But then something incredible happened. In a final, impossible act of sheer will, his headless body remained standing. With both hands, it offered his own head and the sword to the stranger. The traveler took them and vowed, "I will not fail you." And only then did Shi's body finally fall. So the stranger, now an assassin bound by this solemn promise, took the boy's head straight to the King of Chu. And the king? Well, he was overjoyed. He thought his nightmare was finally over. But the stranger's chilling plan was really only just beginning.
"This is the head of a brave warrior," the stranger announced to the court. "To keep its vengeful spirit from haunting you, it must be boiled in a great cauldron." The king, just eager to be done with the whole affair, readily agreed. The trap was now set.
For 3 full days and 3 nights, the head was boiled in a huge pot of water. But it wouldn't dissolve. In fact, it just floated to the surface, its eyes wide open, glaring with this unyielding rage.
The stranger turned to the king. "This boy's spirit is too powerful," he said. "Your Majesty must come and look into the cauldron yourself. Only the presence of a true king can force it to finally submit." The king, driven by a mix of arrogance and curiosity, walked right up to the cauldron and leaned over the edge, peering down into the boiling water.
In that exact moment, the stranger drew the sword of Gan Jiang. With one swift strike, the king's head fell from his shoulders and tumbled into the boiling water. And then, before the guards could even move, the stranger turned the sword on himself. His own head joined the other 2 in the cauldron.
And there they were, 3 heads, the boy's, the king's, and the stranger's, all boiling together. The flesh slowly melted from their bones, their features dissolved away, until they were utterly indistinguishable from one another.
The horrified court officials, they couldn't tell which was which. Unable to identify their king's remains, they really had no choice. They buried the mixed contents of the cauldron all together in a single shared grave, and that place is known, even today, as Sanwang-mu, the tomb of the 3 kings.
The swordmaker, the king, the son, and the stranger. In the end, they were all consumed by the very same cycle of violence. Their identities dissolved, just like their bodies in that cauldron, into one single story of retribution. It leaves us with a quiet, lingering thought. When vengeance has consumed everyone, what is there really left to bury?